Hey guys, it's Kelsey. I'm back with another scrapbooking process video, and this is the layout I'm going to be scraplifting today. I also have this one that Moira scraplifted the first layout from that was also very inspiring, so I just want to show you both of them because that is my inspiration for this layout. This is for scrap 5, so we do need to use craft paper, vellum, a fussy cut item, a doily, and a multi-font title, so I just need to make sure I get that whole recipe on this layout. I'm starting with a 12 by 12 piece of craft paper, and then I am pulling in I always forget what this collection is called. It's My Mind's Eye Market Street. I'm going to try and use as much of this as I can. I used a good bit of it on another layout this month, and there's not a ton left. I mean, there's a decent amount, but I'm really going to try and get through most of it on this layout. So I'm just going to throw a couple layers behind my photo, and then I need to figure out the whole square design of this layout. But I really liked her, Vicky's design in particular, because there's this cool juxtaposition of having this very neat, organized, stacked grid of these squares on the left, and then being able to be a little bit messier and do some fun layers on the right. So I really enjoyed that part of her design, and so I figured I would try and pull that in mine as well. I'm just trying to figure out how to use these scraps that I have from this 6x6 paper pad to mat these photos in a cool way. So I struggle with that for a little bit, and then I end up deciding to just focus on the squares first and then revisit the layering. So you'll see me set this aside in a minute. There is some mixed media behind the layers on the right side of the page, and I completely forget about that until I start gluing things down, so you'll also see me have to go back and do the mixed media. I did fussy cut this entire wreath out of one of the 6x6s. I did that ahead of time thinking that would be my fussy cut item I would use on this page, but I end up having a lot of issues trying to figure out how to use this wreath in this design I was trying to lift. So I also revisit that as well, but that's why I'm trying so hard to get that fussy cut wreath on this layout, because that was going to be my fussy cut item for the recipe. I definitely want to use this multicolored polka dot because there's a lot of different colors in this paper pad I'm trying to pull in on this layout, so I always like having a multicolor pattern that kind of pulls all of them in together, because right now the layers around the photo are just pretty much black and red. But I'll get there. I know I want to layer a lot more, but I just was struggling with how to layer, so I'm going to stop for a moment and get my squares done at least. And I really wanted to do bigger squares like Vicky did on her layout, but for whatever reason, even when I use my trimmer and I'm cutting them the same exact size, it's just never perfect. And when you have squares like this that you need to line up, if you're off even a little bit, it just compounds, and then your whole layout looks like it's really off, even though it only started by a little bit. So I decided to use my square punch instead, just so I would 100% know that they are even in the same size. But I didn't have a larger square, so I'm just using the biggest square I have, which I think is like 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to try it and make that work. But I do have to cut an extra row, because when I tried to line them up how she had them, there wasn't really enough of them, so I had to add an additional row for them to all work out. But I just want a different pattern in each square. They're all kind of cohesive because they're the same collection. There's a lot of different polka dots, but they all kind of pull from the same color scheme. So that'd be cool if I could kind of get a bunch of those different pattern papers represented. And then when I go back to layering my photo, I can pile on all of these other patterns, and they would already be balanced since they're already in a square to the left side of the page. But once I trimmed these squares, I noticed pretty quickly that they're a lot smaller than I thought they were gonna look. So I am gonna go and mat all of them in white. And because that's the largest square I had to use my trimmer anyways. But I think for the most part they're pretty close. But I do like having the white mat around all these little squares, just to add another little layer, and it kind of separates them from the craft background. This collection is kind of, I don't want to say dull, because that's not what I mean, but the saturation is kind of turned down in these colors, which makes them these really cool kind of muted versions of these tones. But having that on top of the craft background paper really kind of makes this whole page look a little darker. So I like pulling in these little pops of white around all of these little elements to try and brighten up my page a little bit. So the white mat around my photo helps, and these tiny little mats around these squares I think help brighten it up a little bit, because it was looking kind of very dull and dark otherwise. So that's another kind of thing that was going through my head. But in the end, I'm glad I had to cut a fifth set of squares, because I just think odd numbers look better design-wise anyways. So I'm trying to go through my stash, my scraps here, to find another paper that I haven't used yet, for that last little bit, which all of these bits are, papers are double-sided, which is nice because you kind of get 2 patterns for each paper. But I wanted one that I hadn't used yet because I want all these squares to be different, so I did have to cut into a new sheet of a 6x6 for that. But since this is like the last page I'm trying to get out of this collection, I figured it was okay if I could cut into there, because I don't think I'm going to get another page out of this paper pad. I got a lot used up on this one, and then the other layout I did using this paper pad this month. So I'm happy with that. But I'm just shifting around the squares. Polka dots are going to be touching polka dots because most of those patterns are. But I'm trying to get the patterns and the multicolors and the ones that are in the same color seem kind of separated there on the left, so there's a good balance of how they're lined up. And now I'm kind of revisiting my layers around my photo. So I'm trying to just go through the scraps. But I really like Moira's interpretation of Vicky. She turned those vertical strips that Vicky had in the middle of her layout, kind of separating these squares from the photo, into banners. And I thought that was a really cute way to shift that. So I'm going to end up turning mine into banners as well. So I'm trying to think about these pieces that I need to be long bits running down the middle of the page and how I can make these 6-inch scraps look longer. So I think I'm going to end up having to shift these photo layers to the left just so I can cover up the seam or the gap that there's going to be from the banners I'll end up having. But for right now, I'm just trying to add more layers to the right side. I want there to be a lot of fun layers over here behind the photo, because I really liked that juxtaposition of the fun layers over here and then the straight squares over there. So I'm kind of just procrastinating having to glue down these squares because I know I'm going to have a hard time trying to line them all up. I always do. But by just focusing on the photo layers for a bit, I don't have to worry about it. So I really liked having this brown lacy one incorporated because that's one of the squares to the left, and I think that really brings out that craft color a little bit. But I definitely want layers behind that because I think it kind of sinks into the craft background having that brown lacy pattern directly on that. So I will end up layering even more. But I think the layers are looking decent for now. I think adding the banners, the vertical banners that will end up on the page will really help. So I'm going to go ahead and get the squares glued down, and then I'll revisit again the right side of the page. But I'm just trying to use my ruler here to figure out how to evenly space these. I started with the top and bottom square. I just tried to get the middle square exactly in the middle, and then the last 2 squares in the middle of those 2 squares. So I felt like that was the easiest way for me to make sure they were spaced evenly. And then I just tried to make sure there was equal amounts of space around the top, side, and bottom of these squares as well. So I think it's about 1 inch. I mean, it's a ruler's width pretty much that I was able to keep. So now I just need to line up the second row. After you have the first row straight, it's easier from there. So I got those down. I think they look neat enough. But yeah, I like how those look. So now I need to focus on some banners. I'm going to need to do some embellishing at some point, and I still think I keep fighting with that fussy cut wreath for a while, but for right now I'm just going to keep working on my photo layers. I'm cutting my little banner tails in the 3 patterns I want. I really wanted this white and pink plaid because, again, I want to pull some more white out of this page to help keep it bright. But I really liked the bold red. The red is one of the squares. It's one of the larger mats around the photo, so I thought that would be a nice central focal point, having that be one of the longer banners as well. And then I'm pulling in this blue pattern just because I felt like it was super different than the other 2. And that's also one of the squares to the left. So I think that helps mix up the patterns and the colors a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to try and just line those up. I want the tops and the bottoms of all these banners to be different just so you can get the layery look of all of those different corners. And there's going to be a seam, like I said, just because I'm trying to make these banners look like they run almost the full length of the page, but they're only 6-inch scraps. So there's a seam there on the red polka dot. The other two I know are going to be covered by my photo, so I can just have a gap there and I'll end up covering it. But I do need to think about what I want to do with this seam here on the red polka dot. But once I layered this, this photo over the top of them, there's not a whole bunch of the red polka dot showing on the side there, so I think I might be able to get away with not having to cover it. But we'll see. I definitely want more layers though, and I have all these scraps, so I'm just trying to tuck a little bit more on around the photo. So I have this polka dot here that wasn't represented yet around the photos, but it's one of the squares on the left, so I liked how that was pulled across the page. I'm still just looking through my scraps here to figure out what I want to do. I right now I only have the craft paper, I think. I haven't used anything else for my recipe, so I still need to get vellum. I still need to do my fussy cut item, a doily, and a multi-font title. So I only have one of them so far, but I'm thinking a lot of them are kind of finishing touch type things. So I'm just trying to get the design portion down, and then I'll revisit my list of stuff I need to use. You can see I have vellum and my doily pulled out to the left there, so I don't forget. But then, like I said, there's mixed media on my inspiration photo from Vicky, so I wanted to make sure I got that. So I pulled up all the layers to the right, and I'm just going to do a little bit of mixed media over there. I decided to use this teal blue and do the packaging technique. I was trying to get a blue that was similar to the teal-y blue that's one of the banners and one of the squares, just to pull that blue out a little more, because I felt like that was the one color that kind of was a little bit lost. This blue doesn't look as teal-y as I thought it would, so it's more of a truer blue, but it's still a color that's represented in some of these pattern papers, so I'm still okay with it. But I didn't want to mess up the square portion. I really wanted this messiness to stay on the right, so you can see I'm trying to keep it more heavy on that side. So I did packaging, smushing, and then I went around and splattered some blue as well just to add a little bit more. And then I felt like I needed another color to kind of increase the dimension, and at this point I'm thinking my title will probably be gold. So I did do some Heidi Swap gold color shine around as well on top of the blue, and I think that looks really nice, and it helps brighten it up a little bit, because again, I don't want this page to look dark or muted or dull or muddy, and it does a little bit. So I think introducing some gold also helps brighten it up, as well as some of this bright white. But I think that's a really cool detail as well. I just love that part of her design, how the left was so neat and then the right you had a little bit more fun with. But now that I have the mixed media, I put those layers back down, and now I'm trying to focus on my recipe again. So I just have a couple scraps of vellum here I decided to tuck in on top of this brown lacy pattern. I thought there was just too much of that pattern showing. It was kind of dominating the page, so I thought it would be cool if I just layered some vellum on top of it just to help tone it down a little bit. And then I decided to cut the vellum into a banner down here at the bottom, just so there was a little bit of interest. And I'm thinking my title will run down there as well. And then here again, I'm back with this fussy cut wreath. I'm determined to use this as my fussy cut item because it took me forever to cut it out, and I just wanted to use it, but I struggle. So you can see I'm trying to line it up on the left here where it would cover the seam from that red polka dot. But it's not working. I just don't like anywhere I put it. So I'll revisit that. But there is a lot of like red on red over there with the red mat and the red banner. So I'm just going to toss in this scrap of this blue. I felt like this blue was a really good match to the mixed media I did. And I'm just tucking it in on the left here as another layer between the photo and these banners, just so there wasn't so much red on red, because you can see that photo mat is really close to that banner, and that helps separate it a little bit. And it covers up more of this red banner, so there's only a sliver of it showing, and you really can't tell that there's a seam there now with such a small amount showing, so I'm okay not covering it up. And then I decided to just tuck my doily down here because I needed a doily on this page for the recipe. Again, I like that brings in more white and kind of brightens it up a little bit. And then I saw I had this scrap of this floral, and I was like, you know what? Instead of using the wreath, let me just fussy cut a couple florals from this pattern paper and use those as my fussy cut item instead. I really like how Vicky and Moira kind of decorated their squares to the left here. They had kind of just something different in each square, and I thought that was really cute. But I knew I wouldn't be able to achieve that because I knew if I put something in every square, it would look messy to my eye. Like, I don't know, like they did it so good. But I thought maybe I could put some of these fussy cut florals in a couple of the squares. I'm thinking I'm going to leave most of these squares to left here just open. But I do want some embellishment because I really do like how on theirs they had some embellishment in and amongst these squares to the left. But for right now, I'm just going to fussy cut these florals, and I'm thinking I'm just going to try and use those as part of my embellishing, but that way I get that part of the recipe used up. I really like how this blue one looks over this doily here to the right. So I'm just trying to find another spot for this white flower that will kind of balance that across the page. I try it on the bottom left square. I try to shift around these two, but what I end up going with is having the flower in the upper left-hand corner of the photo and keeping the blue flower over where the doily was, because I really liked how that blue flower looks sitting over the doily. So I'll shift them in a little bit. These blue leaves that were next to this white flower, though, were just looking kind of funny, so I just fussy cut them off of the white flower and then tucked them in a little farther, and I think it looks cuter that way. But you can see I'm trying to figure out how to keep them across from each other. I think this is how one of the other two layouts had their embellishment going, so I was trying to copy it. But since I had this doily on the bottom right part, I wanted a flower down there instead, so I'm going to swippy swap these a little bit and just shift it up some. But I like that because now the picture is framed, and I got my fussy cut florals on here. So now I'm going to go through my stash, and I love these little core cards I got from Redefine Creative. So I'm just going to throw a couple of those as my embellishment on here. I haven't even told you what this photo is about, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. This is the sign at my job. And there was just a rainbow one morning. I think it was a Saturday morning, and we drove into work, and there was this little rainbow, and it looked like it was going over our little sign. So I wanted to take a picture. I thought it was really sweet, and I like documenting rainbows when I come across them, and I haven't had one in a while, so I just thought it was really nice that it was kind of where work was. It helps us start the morning for sure. But then I found these gold thickers, so I'm just going to spell out rainbow. I need a 2 font title. I think that's the last thing I have for my my recipe. So I'm just spelling rainbow out in the big gold, and then I found some little tile letters that were also white and gold from Freckled Fawn, and I'm just gonna say at work. It's not super creative, but together it reads rainbow at work, which is self-explanatory. I really don't need to do journaling, but I thought that was a nice way to get both of those fonts on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick down these cork hearts. And I just have a little one over here by the blue flower, and then I just tucked 2 of them over here on the squares, and that's really the only embellishing I'm going to do. But here are the close-ups, so thank you guys so much for watching. This was a really fun one to lift, and I'm glad I got so much of that paper pad used up, so that was really exciting. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.